What I'm about to tell you happened 3 years ago, and I've kept silent about it until now. Not because I was afraid people wouldn't believe me, though that's part of it, but because I needed time to understand what it meant, what he told me, what he showed me, and why, of all the people on this spinning planet, he chose a broken-down mechanic in a forgotten corner of West Virginia to deliver a message that would shatter everything I thought I knew about God, about humanity, and about the choice we're all about to face. Before we go any further, I need you to do something for me. Comment below and tell me where you're watching this from. Tell me your city, your country, the time of day. Because what I'm about to share with you isn't just my story, it's ours. And if you've ever felt like there's something more, something just beyond the veil of what we can see and touch, then hit that subscribe button. Stay with me. And when this is over, if you've had your own encounter, your own moment when the impossible became undeniably real, share it in the comments. We need each other's testimonies now more than ever. Now let me take you back. It was February 14th, 2022. Valentine's Day, though that detail felt like cosmic irony given I'd spent the last 5 years alone. The garage sat on Route 52 about 20 miles south of Bluefield, a squat cinder-block building with a corrugated tin roof that sang in the rain and groaned in the wind. My father built it in 1987. I inherited it in 2016 along with his debts, his tools, and a reputation for honest work that barely kept the lights on. The temperature that night had dropped to 18 degrees. I remember because the thermometer outside the office window had a crack running through the face, and I'd watched the red line sink all evening while I finished replacing the transmission on a '98 Ford Ranger. My hands ached. My back ached. Everything ached in the particular way it does when you're 53 and you've spent 30 years under cars, breathing in oil and rust and the slow dissolution of the American working class. I should have gone home at 6. Should have heated up the leftover chili in my fridge, watched whatever game was on, fallen asleep in the recliner like I did most nights. But the Ranger needed to be done by morning, and I'd learned long ago that sleep was just another luxury I couldn't quite afford. The last bolt clicked into place at 11:47 p.m. I know the exact time because I checked my phone, saw I had no messages. I never had messages and was reaching for the shop rag when the lights went out. Not gradually, not with a flicker or a surge. They just died all at once, like someone had thrown a switch on the entire world. The space heater stopped humming. The radio went silent mid-song. Even the exit sign over the door, which ran on a battery backup, went dark. The silence that followed wasn't natural. It was too complete, too heavy, like the air itself had been replaced with something denser. I stood there in the absolute darkness of my garage, grease-stained rag in my hand, and felt the first cold finger of fear trace down my spine. Then I heard it. A sound like wind chimes, but lower, resonant, almost vocal. It came from everywhere and nowhere, vibrating through the concrete floor, through my boots, through my bones. And with it came light, not the harsh fluorescent light of the shop, but something else. Something that seemed to emanate from the air itself, blue-white and pulsing, like watching someone's heartbeat translated into luminescence. The light was coming from the far bay, where I kept the vehicles waiting for parts. I'd left a '67 Mustang there, a restoration project that had been sitting for 8 months while the owner saved up for a new engine block. The light seemed to be pooling around it, underneath it, as if the car itself were floating on liquid radiance. My first instinct was fire. Electrical fire, maybe. But there was no heat, no smoke, no crackling. Just that impossible light and that sound. That singing, metallic hum that made my teeth ache and my vision blur at the edges. I should have run. Every animal instinct in my body was screaming at me to run, to get out, to put as much distance as possible between myself and whatever was happening in my garage. But I didn't run. Maybe it was stubbornness. Maybe it was curiosity. Or maybe somewhere deep in the part of me that still remembered how to pray, I knew that running wouldn't matter. That whatever this was, it had come for me specifically. I took a step forward, then another. The light grew brighter with each step, but it didn't hurt my eyes. It should have. It was intense enough that I should have been blind, squinting, turning away. But instead it felt almost gentle, like moonlight, like dawn, like every peaceful morning I'd ever known, concentrated into a single luminous moment. When I reached the Mustang, I saw him. He was standing beside the car, or perhaps floating. I couldn't tell because the light was so bright around his lower body that it obscured any sense of ground or gravity. He was tall, maybe 7 feet, though proportioned like a human, not stretched or distorted. His skin, if you could call it that, seemed to shift between solid and translucent, like looking at someone through water, like he was only partially here, only partially real. But his eyes, God help me, his eyes were completely, terribly real. They were larger than human eyes, almond-shaped and tilted slightly upward, and they held depths that my mind couldn't quite process, colors that don't exist, darkness that somehow emitted light. When he looked at me, and he was looking at me, with an intensity that felt like being read, like being known in a way no human had ever known me, I felt simultaneously terrified and utterly safe. "Thomas," he said. His mouth didn't move. The word simply appeared in my mind, in my own voice, but not my own voice, like a memory I'd never had. He knew my name. Of course he knew my name. "What are you?" I managed to whisper. My voice sounded harsh and small in the presence of that light, that sound, that impossible being standing in my garage beside a rusting Mustang. "A messenger," he said. And this time I understood that the concept was bigger than the word, that messenger meant something vast and ancient and holy that my language could barely contain. "I have been sent to you, Thomas Reed, because you are ready to hear what must be spoken, because your heart, despite its wounds, has remained open, because in your isolation you have continued to seek truth." "I haven't sought anything," I said. It came out defensive, almost angry. "I fix cars. I survive. That's it." "Survival is a form of faith," he said, and somehow I could hear the gentleness in those wordless words. "You have survived grief, loneliness, the death of your dreams, and yet you wake each morning, you do your work with honesty, you speak kindly to strangers, you have not let the world make you cruel. This is not nothing, Thomas. This is everything." Tears were running down my face. I didn't know when they'd started. I hadn't cried since my father's funeral, and before that, not since my wife left, taking our daughter with her, disappearing into a life I couldn't follow and didn't deserve to be part of. But standing there in that impossible light, hearing this impossible being speak impossible truths about my small, unremarkable life, something broke open inside me. "Why me?" I asked. "If you have a message, why not give it to someone important? Someone who matters." "You matter," he said, and the weight of his certainty was like a physical force. "You matter because every soul matters. Because the message I carry is not for kings or presidents or popes. It is for the forgotten, the overlooked, the ones who keep the world running while the powerful play their games. It is for people like you, Thomas, because people like you are the only ones who might listen." He moved closer, and I realized that the light wasn't coming from him. It was coming through him, as if he were a prism, a lens focusing something vast and distant and unbearably bright into a form I could almost comprehend. "I need you to understand something," he said. "What I am about to tell you is not metaphor. It is not parable. It is truth, literal and absolute, and it concerns the immediate future of your species. In 7 years from this night, humanity will face a choice. Not a collective choice. Each individual soul will be called to decide, called to declare their allegiance. And the choice you make will determine not just your fate, but the fate of this world and all who come after. The garage seemed to expand around us. Or maybe we shrank, or maybe the boundaries between space and time became fluid in his presence. I could still see the tools on the pegboard, the oil stains on the concrete, the Ford Ranger I'd just finished. But they seemed distant now, less real than the being before me and the words forming in my mind. "I don't understand," I said. "I know," he said, "but you will. Listen, Thomas. Listen with more than your ears. Listen with the part of you that already knows this is true." And then he began to speak, and the world I knew began to unravel. "Your planet stands at a threshold," he said. "Not a threshold of technology, though that plays its part. Not a threshold of politics or economics, though those too are symptoms of the deeper shift. You stand at a threshold of consciousness, of choice, of spiritual evolution. The question before humanity is simple and terrible. Will you choose love, or will you choose fear?" "That's not a prophecy," I said. That's what every religion has said since the beginning." "Yes," he agreed, "because it has always been true. Because this choice is the only choice that matters, the only choice that has ever mattered. But now, Thomas, now the consequences of that choice are becoming visible, tangible, inescapable. The veil between the spiritual and material is thinning. What was once metaphor is becoming manifest." He raised one hand, a hand that seemed to have too many fingers, or perhaps the right number, but arranged in a way my eyes couldn't quite track, and the light around us changed. Images began to form in the air. Not solid, but not quite holographic either. Living pictures, scenes playing out with the weight of absolute reality. I saw cities, millions of people moving through streets, through buildings, through lives of quiet desperation. And above them, invisible to their eyes but visible now to mine, I saw threads. Connections. Lights linking person to person, glowing in colors I'd never seen, pulsing with energy and information and emotion. Some threads were bright, golden, warm. Others were dark, twisted, frayed. "This is what we see," he said. "The web of human connection. Every interaction, every choice, every moment of kindness or cruelty creates these bonds. They are real, Thomas. More real than the concrete and steel of your cities. They form the true structure of your world, the foundation upon which everything else is built." The image shifted. I saw the same cities, but now the threads were changing. The dark ones were multiplying, spreading like infection, like cancer, wrapping around the bright threads and choking them out. People moved through their lives unaware, but the web around them was dying, collapsing, turning gray and brittle. "Fear is spreading," he said. "Fear of the other. Fear of change. Fear of loss. It is fed by your media, your politics, your systems of power that profit from division. But fear is not an external force, Thomas. It is a choice. Every day, every moment, every human being chooses between love and fear, between connection and separation, between truth and the comfortable lie." "But why?" I asked. The question felt childish, inadequate. Why would anyone choose fear? "Because fear feels safe," he said. "Because love requires vulnerability, requires risk, requires the courage to admit that you are not separate, not special, not protected by your skin color or your nation or your bank account from the suffering of others. Fear tells you that you can build walls high enough to keep out the pain. Love knows that there is no wall, that all pain is shared pain, that the only true safety lies in binding yourself to others rather than isolating yourself from them." He lowered his hand and the images faded, but their after-image remained burned into my mind. I could still see those threads, still feel them, as if he'd opened a sense I didn't know I had. "In 7 years," he continued, The consequences of humanity's collective choices will become undeniable. The systems built on exploitation will collapse. The lies told to maintain power will be exposed. The environmental destruction will accelerate beyond any hope of simple technological solution. These are not punishments, Thomas. They are natural consequences. You cannot build a civilization on fear and greed and expect it to stand forever. So we're doomed? I asked. Is that the prophecy? That we're going to destroy ourselves? No, he said. And for the first time I heard something like emotion in his voice, not quite hope, but something adjacent to it, something that recognized the possibility of hope. You are not doomed. You are at a choice point. The collapse of the old systems is necessary, inevitable. But what rises from those ashes depends entirely on the choices you make in the coming years. What kind of choices? Every kind, he said. How you treat the stranger, how you speak to the clerk at the grocery store. Whether you allow anger to control you or whether you pause, breathe, choose compassion instead. Whether you hoard resources or share them. Whether you retreat into tribalism or expand your circle of care. These small choices, repeated millions of times by millions of people, will determine everything. He moved closer still, and now I could feel the energy radiating from him, warm and cool simultaneously, like standing in spring rain. When he spoke again, his voice, his thought voice, was gentle, almost sad. Do you remember your daughter, Thomas? The question hit me like a physical blow. I staggered back, caught myself against the Mustang's hood. Don't, I said. Don't talk about her. Her name is Sarah, he continued, relentless but not cruel. She is 28 now. She lives in Portland. She works at a non-profit that provides housing for homeless veterans. She thinks about you often, though she tells herself she doesn't. She wants to call you, but she's afraid. Afraid you'll reject her again. I never rejected her, I said, but the words came out weak, hollow. Her mother took her. I didn't. I couldn't. You let her go, he said. You told yourself it was for the best, that they'd be better off without you, that you had nothing to offer them. You chose isolation over the difficult work of repair. You chose the fear of inadequacy over the risk of love. I was on my knees now, though I didn't remember falling. The concrete was cold and hard through my jeans. Why are you doing this? I asked. Why are you hurting me? I am not hurting you, he said. The hurt is already there. I am only helping you see it. Because until you see it, Thomas, until you acknowledge the ways you have chosen fear over love in your own life, you cannot understand the choice facing all of humanity. You cannot be the messenger I need you to be. I don't want to be a messenger, I said. I don't want any of this. I know, he said. No one ever does. Every prophet, every witness, every person called to speak difficult truths would prefer to live a quiet life. But you have been chosen, Thomas, not because you are special, but because you are ready. Because your heart, despite everything, has not hardened. Because you still feel the pain of separation, which means you still remember connection. He knelt beside me, an alien being, a messenger from beyond, kneeling on the dirty floor of my garage like an old friend comforting another old friend. When he placed his hand on my shoulder, I felt warmth spread through my body, not just physical warmth, but something deeper, like every cell was being reminded of what wholeness felt like. The prophecy is not about punishment, he said. It is about transformation. Your species is in the birth canal, Thomas. You are being born into a new way of being, a new level of consciousness. But birth is traumatic. It is painful. It requires the death of the old form. Many will resist. Many will cling to the dying systems, to the familiar fears, even as those systems crush them. But those who can let go, who can trust the process, who can choose love even in the midst of chaos, they will midwife the new world. What does that even mean? I asked. What new world? What are you actually talking about? The light around us intensified, and suddenly we weren't in the garage anymore. Or we were, but we were also somewhere else, someone else. I saw the earth from above, blue and white, and heartbreakingly beautiful, and I saw it changing. In 7 years, he said, the temperature thresholds you have been warned about will be crossed. Coastal cities will begin to flood. Droughts will intensify. Crops will fail. Millions will be displaced. This is already in motion, Thomas. The carbon in the atmosphere, the feedback loops initiated, cannot be reversed quickly enough through technology alone. The image zoomed closer, and I saw people fleeing rising waters, saw children with swollen bellies in dust-blown fields, saw riots and walls and weapons, but I also saw other things. I saw communities coming together, saw strangers helping strangers, saw people opening their homes and sharing their food and choosing solidarity over survival. 2 paths, he said. 2 possible futures branching from the same crisis. In one, fear dominates. Nations close their borders. The wealthy retreat into fortified enclaves. Resources are hoarded. Violence becomes the primary language. The strong prey on the weak, and humanity fragments into warring tribes fighting over the scraps of a dying world. This path leads to catastrophic population collapse, the loss of most of your technological knowledge, and a dark age that will last for centuries. The vision shifted, and I saw that darker future in detail. Cities in ruins, fields barren, small groups of survivors living like feudal serfs under the control of warlords and demagogues, knowledge forgotten, science dismissed as witchcraft, the slow, grinding continuation of suffering for generation after generation. But there is another path, he said, and the vision changed again. In this future, the crisis becomes the catalyst for the transformation your species has always been capable of, but never quite achieved. Nations dissolve their borders. Resources are shared according to need. The old hierarchies of power based on wealth, on race, on nationality, are recognized as the illusions they always were. People organize locally but think globally. They develop new forms of governance based on consensus and compassion, rather than competition and control. I saw cities rebuilt, not as concrete jungles but as green spaces integrated with nature. I saw farms that fed communities without depleting the soil. I saw energy systems that worked with the sun and wind instead of ripping open the earth. I saw people of every color and creed working side by side, not because they'd forgotten their differences, but because they'd realized those differences were less important than their commonalities. This future is possible, he said, but it is not inevitable. It requires a critical mass of humans making the choice for love over fear. That critical mass is not a majority. You don't need everyone to change, but you need enough. You need the tipping point. How many? I asked. How many people need to choose love? We calculate approximately 8%, he said. 8% of humanity actively, consciously, consistently choosing connection over separation, compassion over cruelty, truth over comfortable lies. 8% who are willing to act on their values even when it costs them something. 8% who can hold the vision of a better world even in the midst of chaos. If you reach that threshold, the transformation will cascade. The new systems will begin to emerge. The future of cooperation and sustainability becomes possible. And if we don't reach it, he was silent for a long moment, and in that silence I felt the weight of countless other worlds, countless other species that had faced this same choice point. Some had succeeded, most had not. Then you join the many rather than the few, he said finally. Your potential remains unrealized. Your species contracts, suffers, and eventually, in thousands of years, perhaps tries again. The universe is patient, Thomas. It will give you as many chances as you need. But each failure costs millennia of suffering that could have been avoided. Each refusal to evolve means countless souls living and dying in pain that serves no purpose. The visions faded, and we were back in the garage. But everything looked different now. The tools, the cars, the oil-stained concrete, they seemed flimsy, temporary, like stage props in a play I'd forgotten I was part of. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. "What am I supposed to do with this information?" "You are supposed to live it," he said. "You are supposed to become the change you wish to see, as one of your teachers said. You are supposed to start with the choice you have been avoiding for 15 years. You are supposed to call your daughter." I shook my head. "You don't understand. She doesn't want to hear from me. I failed her. I failed them both." "You failed yourself," he said. "But failure is not final unless you choose to make it so. Sarah is waiting, Thomas. She has been waiting for years for her father to be brave enough to reach out, to apologize, to try. Your reconciliation with her will not save the world, but it will save you. And a saved person, a healed person, a person who has chosen love over fear in their own life, that person can then help others make the same choice." "I don't know how," I whispered. "Yes, you do," he said. "You know exactly how. You pick up the phone. You say, 'I'm sorry.' You say, 'I was wrong.' You say, 'I love you, and I miss you, and I know I don't deserve another chance, but I'm asking for one anyway.' You make yourself vulnerable. You risk rejection. You choose love." He stood, and the light around him began to pulse, to intensify, and I knew our time was ending. There was so much more I wanted to ask, so many questions about who he was, where he came from, why any of this mattered to him or his people or whatever cosmic order had sent him. But somehow I understood that those questions were distractions, that I was trying to intellectualize what could only be felt, only be lived. "I have 3 more things to tell you," he said. 3 pieces of the prophecy that you must remember and share with others when the time comes." I nodded, trying to prepare myself, trying to memorize every detail of this impossible moment. "First, the systems you trust will fail. Your governments, your corporations, your media, your money, all of it is built on foundations of sand, and the tide is coming in. When these systems collapse, there will be tremendous fear. People will want strong leaders to restore order, to make things like they were. Resist this impulse. The old order cannot be restored. The new order must be built from love, not from nostalgia for a past that was never as good as you remember. Second, you are not alone. There are millions of people around your world who are already choosing love, already building the new systems, already living according to principles of cooperation and compassion. You cannot see them because your media does not report on them, because they are not centralized, because they work quietly and locally. But they are there. When the crisis comes, seek them out. Join them. Add your efforts to theirs. The transformation will emerge from 1,000 small communities, not from any single leader or movement. Third, and most important, your enemy is not other people. The divisions you see, conservative versus liberal, religious versus secular, rich versus poor, nation versus nation, these are illusions. Useful illusions for those who profit from division, but illusions nonetheless. Your only enemy is fear itself, fear that manifests as greed, as hatred, as the desire to control and dominate. When you feel that fear rising in yourself, pause. Breathe. Remember that you are connected to all life, that your well-being and the well-being of others are inseparable. Choose love. Always, always choose love. The light was blinding now, and I had to close my eyes. I could feel him withdrawing, not moving away, but somehow becoming less present, less real, as if he were sliding back to whatever dimension he'd emerged from. "Will I see you again?" I asked. "Perhaps," he said, and his voice was fading, becoming more like a memory than a present experience. "But it doesn't matter. What matters is what you do now. What matters is the choice you make tomorrow morning when you wake up and remember this night. Will you dismiss it as a dream, as hallucination, as the product of isolation and exhaustion? Or will you accept it as truth and let it change you?" "I don't know," I said honestly. "That's all right," he said, and I could hear the smile in his words. "Not knowing is the beginning of wisdom. Just promise me one thing, Thomas." "What?" "Call your daughter." And then he was gone. The light vanished instantly, like someone had thrown a switch, and I was alone in my dark garage. The space heater clicked back on, the exit sign flickered to life. The radio resumed mid-song, some country ballad about lost love and highways. I sat on the cold floor for a long time, shaking, crying, trying to process what had just happened. Part of me wanted to believe it had been a hallucination, a mental break brought on by loneliness and exhaustion, but I could still feel the warmth where his hand had touched my shoulder, could still see those images burned into my mind, could still hear his voice, not in my ears but deeper, in whatever part of me recognizes truth when it hears it. Eventually I stood. My legs were unsteady, and I had to hold on to the Mustang for support. When I looked at my phone, it was 11:52 p.m., 5 minutes. The entire encounter had lasted 5 minutes of clock time, though it had felt like hours. I closed up the garage mechanically, turning off lights, locking doors, checking tools like I did every night. But I wasn't really there. Part of me was still kneeling on that floor, listening to an impossible being tell me impossible truths about the future of the world. I drove home in a daze, made it inside, sat on my couch without turning on any lights. And then I picked up my phone. Sarah's number was still in my contacts. I'd never deleted it, though I'd never called it either. My thumb hovered over her name for what felt like an eternity. All my old fears came flooding back. She won't answer. She'll hang up. She hates you. You don't deserve forgiveness. You'll only hurt her again. But underneath those fears, I could hear his voice. Choose love. So I pressed the button. It rang once, twice, 3 times. I was about to hang up, relief and disappointment mixing in equal measure, when the line connected. "Hello?" Her voice. God, her voice. I'd forgotten how much it sounded like her mother's, like music, like home. "Sarah," I said, and my voice cracked on her name. "It's Dad. It's your father. I know it's late, and I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I need to tell you something. I need to tell you that I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for everything, for leaving, for not fighting for you, for letting fear make me into a coward. And I know I don't deserve it. But I'm begging for a chance to try again. To be your father again. To be in your life in whatever way you'll allow." There was silence on the other end, long enough that I thought maybe she'd hung up, maybe I'd destroyed whatever possibility of reconciliation had existed. But then I heard it, a small, choked sound that might have been a laugh or a sob, or both. "Dad," she said, and she was crying. I could hear it. "I've been waiting for you to call for 15 years. We talked for 3 hours that night. I told her everything about the garage, about my life, about the slow decay of hope I'd experienced and mistaken for maturity. I didn't tell her about the visitor, about the prophecy. That would come later, much later, after we'd rebuilt enough trust that she could hear it without thinking. I'd lost my mind. She told me about her life, about her work, about a man she was dating who sounded kind and steady. She told me about the years of therapy, about the anger she'd worked through, about how she'd made peace with my absence even as a part of her kept hoping I'd come back. We cried together. We laughed together. We made plans to meet, tentative at first, then more concrete, as we both realized we wanted this, needed this, had been waiting for this without quite admitting it to ourselves. When we finally hung up, when I finally let her go to sleep because it was nearly 3 a.m. her time, I sat in my dark living room and felt something I hadn't felt in decades. Not happiness, not exactly. Something more fundamental than that, wholeness. Like a piece of myself I'd thought was lost forever had suddenly clicked back into place. That was 3 years ago. Sarah and I talk twice a week now. She visited last summer, met my neighbors, laughed at my terrible cooking. She's teaching me to be a grandfather. She's pregnant now, due in October, and I'm learning that it's never too late to choose love over fear, connection over isolation, truth over the comfortable lie. But I'm also watching the world, and I'm seeing everything he told me coming true. The systems are failing. The political divisions are widening. The climate disasters are accelerating. Every day the news brings fresh evidence that we are, exactly as he said, in the birth canal. The old world is dying. The contractions are coming faster. The pain is intensifying, and I see people making their choices. I see some retreating further into fear, into tribalism, into the fantasy that we can build walls high enough to keep out the suffering. But I also see others, more and more each day, choosing differently. Choosing to help refugees instead of demonizing them. Choosing to reduce their consumption instead of maximizing their comfort. Choosing to speak truth even when it costs them friendships, jobs, social standing. I see people organizing, building, creating, community gardens and tool libraries and mutual aid networks, alternative schools and worker cooperatives and neighborhood care teams. They're not waiting for governments or corporations to save them. They're not hoping for some technological miracle. They're just doing the work, day by day, choice by choice, building the new world in the shell of the old. Are there enough of them? Are we approaching that 8% threshold? I don't know. I can't know. But I know I'm trying to be one of them. I know I've started talking to my customers differently, listening more, judging less. I know I've joined the town council and pushed for a community solar project. I know I'm repairing things not just because people pay me, but because every repair is an act of resistance against the disposable culture that's killing the planet. Small things. Ordinary things. But that's the point, isn't it? The prophecy isn't about waiting for heroes or saviors. It's about each of us, in our ordinary lives, making the choice for love over fear. Again and again. In big ways and small ways, until those choices add up to a transformation. 7 years from February 14, 2022 puts us at February 14, 2029. That's less than 4 years away now. I don't know what will happen on that specific date, maybe nothing visible. Maybe the choice point isn't a single moment but a period, a window of time when the trajectory of human civilization can still be shifted. Or maybe something will happen that I can't even imagine. Something that will make the reality of our choice undeniable to everyone. But I do know this. I'm not afraid anymore. I spent most of my life afraid. Afraid of failure, of judgment, of vulnerability, of the pain that comes from letting yourself care about something beyond your own survival. And that fear made me small, made me isolated, made me miss out on years with my daughter that I can never get back. The visitor didn't take my fear away. If anything, knowing what's coming, knowing the scope of the crisis we face, should have made me more afraid. But instead, he gave me something better than the absence of fear. He gave me a reason to choose love anyway. He showed me that love is not naive optimism or wishful thinking. It's the only pragmatic response to reality. It's the only thing that's ever actually worked to create lasting change. Fear makes you hoard, withdraw, attack. Love makes you share, connect, protect. Fear sees others as threats or resources. Love sees others as reflections of yourself, deserving of the same dignity and care you wish for yourself. Fear leads to the dark future, the collapse, the centuries of suffering. Love leads to the transformation, the rebirth, the world we've always been capable of creating. So that's my testimony. That's what I'm sharing with you today. Not because I think I'm special. I'm not because I have all the answers. I don't. But because I was chosen to carry a message, and I'm finally brave enough to deliver it. The choice is coming. Maybe it's already here. Every day, every interaction, every decision you make is a vote for the world you want to live in. You can choose fear, or you can choose love. You can choose isolation, or you can choose connection. You can choose to serve only yourself, or you can choose to serve the whole. Neither choice is easy. Both have costs. But only one has a future worth living. Call your daughter. Call your son. Call your estranged brother, your distant friend, your neighbor you've never spoken to. Reach out. Risk rejection. Make yourself vulnerable. Choose love even when fear feels safer. Especially when fear feels safer. Join something. A community garden, a mutual aid network, a local action group, a faith community that actually practices what it preaches. Find the others who are choosing love, who are building the new world. Add your skills, your time, your resources to theirs. You don't have to do everything. You just have to do something. Reduce your consumption. Not because it will single-handedly stop climate change, it won't, but because every choice matters.